The stagecoach rattled to a stop in a cloud of dust, leaving Zara Kline clutching her small valise with white knuckles as she peered anxiously through the window. Eureka, Montana Territory, 1878, her new home, though it hardly looked like the promising paradise described in the newspaper advertisement. The main street stretched before her, lined with weathered buildings that had seen better days, much like herself. Her trembling fingers traced the folded letter in her pocket, her agreement to marry a man she'd never met, a rancher named Henry Carson who needed a wife. "End of the line, madam," the driver called, opening the door and extending a calloused hand. "Welcome to Eureka." Zara stepped down, her boots landing in the thick dust of Montana Territory. The journey from Philadelphia had been long and difficult, but not nearly as difficult as the circumstances that had driven her west. Her secret shame weighed heavily on her heart, a burden she carried silently. No one here knew her past, and she intended to keep it that way. The small mining town bustled with activity despite its remote location. Miners, cowboys, and townspeople moved with purpose along the wooden boardwalks. A few curious glances were cast her way, but Zara kept her eyes downcast. She'd learned that drawing attention only invited trouble. "Miss Kline." A deep voice called from behind her. She turned slowly, her heart pounding. The man who approached was tall and broad-shouldered, his face partially shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. As he drew closer, she saw eyes the color of a summer sky, set in a sun-weathered face. "I'm Henry Carson," he said, removing his hat. "I reckon you'd be my mail-order bride." Zara nodded, unable to find her voice. This was the moment she'd both anticipated and dreaded since leaving Philadelphia. The man before her was handsome in a rugged way, with sandy brown hair and a neatly trimmed beard that couldn't hide the strong line of his jaw. "Don't talk much, do you?" He studied her with those piercing blue eyes. When she remained silent, he sighed and picked up her trunk. "Well, I got the wagon over yonder. Ranch is about an hour's ride from town." She followed him to a weathered wagon, climbing up with his assistance. His hands were strong but gentle as he helped her, and she noticed calluses that spoke of hard work. He loaded her trunk, then climbed up beside her and took the reins. "Hope your journey wasn't too difficult," he said, clicking his tongue to get the horses moving. "Montana Territory's not the easiest place to reach." Zara nodded again, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Henry glanced at her. "You know, we're going to be married in 3 days' time, according to what we arranged. Might be nice to hear your voice before then." Shame washed over her. This kind man had paid for her passage west, had opened his home and his life to her, and she couldn't even bring herself to speak to him. But the words stayed locked inside her, prisoner to her fear. As they traveled, Henry pointed out landmarks and spoke of his ranch, filling the silence with descriptions of the land and his cattle operation. His deep voice was soothing, like the rumble of distant thunder without the threat of a storm. "Been ranching here for 8 years now," he told her. "Started with just 20 head of cattle and a broken-down cabin. Got nearly 300 head now and built the house myself." Pride tinged his words. "It's not fancy like what you might be used to back east, but it's solid." The wagon crested a hill, and the landscape opened before them. Rolling grasslands stretched toward distant mountains, painted in shades of gold and amber by the setting sun. In the valley below, a modest ranch house stood beside a barn and corral, smoke curling from the chimney. "That's home," Henry said softly. "Carson Ranch." It was beautiful in its simplicity, and Zara felt a flutter of hope. Perhaps here in this wild country she could find peace. As they approached the ranch, a dog came bounding out to meet them, barking joyfully. Behind it ran a young boy of about 10. "Uncle Henry," he called, "did you bring her? Is she here?" Henry chuckled. Yes, Billy, this is Miss Kline. He turned to Zara. My nephew, Billy. He lives with me since my brother and his wife passed 2 winters ago. The boy stared up at her with wide eyes. Are you really going to be my aunt? Zara managed a small smile and nodded. She doesn't talk much, Henry explained to the disappointed boy. Tired from the journey, I expect, Mrs. Holloway made supper, Billy announced. Said to tell you it's waiting. As Henry helped her down from the wagon, a plump, gray-haired woman emerged from the house, wiping her hands on her apron. Well, there she is at last, the woman exclaimed. I'm Martha Holloway, dear. I keep house for Mr. Carson here, though I expect you'll be taking over those duties soon enough. Zara nodded politely, feeling overwhelmed by the attention. Let's get you settled, Henry said, seeming to sense her discomfort. Billy, help with the trunk. The house was simple but well built, with a large main room containing a cooking area and dining table, plus a comfortable sitting area near the fireplace. Henry showed her to a small bedroom. This'll be yours until the wedding, he said. Mine's across the hall, Billy's at the end. I'll leave you to freshen up before supper. Left alone, Zara sank onto the bed, her composure finally cracking. Tears slid silently down her cheeks as the weight of her decision pressed down on her. How could she marry this decent man when she carried such secrets? But what choice did she have? Going back was impossible. Supper was a quiet affair, with Billy chattering excitedly while Henry and Mrs. Holloway exchanged concerned glances at Zara's continued silence. She ate little, feeling their eyes on her. Billy, help Mrs. Holloway with the dishes, Henry said when they'd finished. Miss Kline and I need to talk. When they were alone, Henry leaned forward, his elbows on the table. Miss Kline, Zara, I don't mean to pry, but I need to ask. Can you speak? She nodded slowly. Is there a reason you won't? Zara lowered her eyes, shame burning through her. Henry's voice softened. Look at me, please. When she raised her eyes, his expression was gentle, not angry as she'd feared. Whatever brought you here, whatever you're running from, you're safe now. You're safe to speak here. Something in his tone, in the steady kindness of his eyes, broke through the wall she'd built around herself. Her voice was barely a whisper, rusty from disuse. I'm afraid. Afraid of what? Of what you'll think. Of what you'll do when you know. Henry's brow furrowed. Know what? She took a shuddering breath. Why I came here. I reckon you came because you needed a fresh start, same as most folks out here. He hesitated, then reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of hers. Out here, it's what you do going forward that counts, not what's behind you. Zara stared at his outstretched hand, then slowly, hesitantly placed her smaller one in it. I was engaged, she whispered. In Philadelphia. Henry waited patiently as she gathered her courage. He was well respected from a good family, but he was. She swallowed hard. He was not a kind man. When I tried to break the engagement, he became angry, violent. Henry's hand tightened slightly around hers, but his expression remained calm. One night tears welled in her eyes. He forced himself on me, said no one would believe me over him. That I was his now, whether I wanted to be or not. I'm sorry, Henry said softly. No one should endure that. I fled to my aunt's home in another part of the city when I discovered I was. Her voice broke. I was with child. Henry's eyes widened slightly, but he didn't pull his hand away. And now I lost the baby, she whispered. But the damage was done. My reputation, my future, everything was gone. My own parents turned me away, said I'd brought shame on them. I saw your advertisement in the newspaper and thought. She looked down at their joined hands. I thought this might be my only chance. A long silence stretched between them. Zara waited for him to withdraw his hand to tell her to leave. Instead, he said, Thank you for trusting me with your truth. She looked up, startled. You still want me here, even knowing what I am. A flash of anger crossed his face. What you are. You're a woman who survived something terrible, a woman who had the courage to start over. His voice gentled. I still want to marry you, Zara, if you'll have me, but I'll understand if you need time. Relief washed over her like a cleansing rain. Thank you, she whispered. We should sleep, Henry said, standing. Tomorrow's a new day. That night in the small bedroom, Zara slept deeply for the first time in months, the burden of her secret somewhat lightened by sharing it. Morning brought the sounds of ranch life, roosters crowing, cattle lowing in the distance, Billy's laughter as he chased the dog across the yard. Zara dressed in her plainest dress and ventured into the kitchen, where Mrs. Holloway was kneading bread dough. Good morning, dear, the older woman said cheerfully. Sleep well. Yes, thank you, Zara replied softly. Mrs. Holloway's hand stilled. Well now, isn't that nice to hear? Mr. Carson said you might find your voice once you settled in. Zara felt a blush warm her cheeks. Is there something I can help with? You can gather eggs if you'd like. Henhouse is just behind the barn. Outside, the Montana morning was crisp and clear, the sky an endless blue. Zara made her way to the henhouse, basket in hand. She found Henry in the barn, saddling his horse. Morning, he said, tipping his hat. You're up early. I wanted to help, she explained, her voice still quiet but steadier than the night before, glad to hear it. He smiled, and the warmth of it reached his eyes. I'm riding out to check the north pasture, should be back by midday. As he mounted his horse, he looked down at her. Zara, I meant what I said last night, you're safe here. She nodded, watching him ride away, a curious warmth spreading through her chest. The next few days fell into a pattern. Zara helped Mrs. Holloway with household chores and began to learn the rhythms of ranch life. She spoke little, but more each day, mostly to Billy, whose innocent chatter required little response. Henry was often busy with ranch work, but at meals his eyes sought hers, checking her comfort, offering silent support. The evening before their wedding, Henry found Zara sitting on the porch, watching the sunset paint the Montana sky in brilliant hues. Mind if I join you? He asked. She shook her head, and he settled beside her on the step. Nervous about tomorrow? He asked. Yes, she admitted. Are you? He chuckled. Terrified. You don't have to go through with it, she said quietly. I understand if you've changed your mind. Henry turned to her, his expression serious. I haven't, but I want to be clear about something. This marriage can be whatever we need it to be. He hesitated. What I mean is, I won't expect certain things. Not until you're ready, maybe not ever if that's how it needs to be. Zara stared at him, astonished by his understanding. Why would you do that, accept such a marriage? He looked out at the darkening landscape. 8 years ago, I came here with nothing but grief and rage after the war. This land gave me purpose again, a home. His eyes met hers. Everyone deserves a chance to heal, Zara, to build something new. They sat in comfortable silence until stars began to appear in the velvet sky. Henry. She said softly, thank you for everything. His smile was gentle. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's a big day. They were married the next morning in Eureka's small church with Billy, Mrs. Holloway, and a handful of Henry's friends as witnesses. Zara wore her best dress, a modest blue gown that Mrs. Holloway had helped alter to fit her better. Henry looked handsome in a clean shirt and his least worn trousers, his hair slicked back with water. As they spoke their vows, Zara's voice was soft but clear. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Henry's kiss was gentle, almost tentative, a whisper of contact that promised respect rather than demanded passion. That night, true to his word, Henry bid her good night at her bedroom door with another gentle kiss to her forehead. Sleep well, Mrs. Carson, he said, his voice warm. Weeks passed, and summer settled fully over the Montana territory. Zara found herself growing stronger, both in body and spirit. Ranch work was hard but satisfying, and each day brought new skills to master and small victories to celebrate. She learned to make soap from lye and fat, to churn butter until her arms ached, to bake bread in the temperamental oven without burning it. Mrs. Holloway stayed on for a month after the wedding, teaching Zara the management of the household before returning to town to live with her daughter. Billy quickly adopted Zara as a confidante, sharing his treasures: interesting rocks, a bird's feather, a toad captured and released with enthusiastic delight. Henry was patient and kind, never pushing for more than she could give. Each night he escorted her to her door with the same gentle kiss. Each morning he greeted her with a smile that seemed to grow warmer as the days passed. One evening in late July, a violent thunderstorm rolled across the ranch. Lightning split the sky, and thunder rattled the windows. Zara sat by the fire, mending one of Henry's shirts, trying not to jump at each thunderclap. "Never liked storms much myself," Henry said, noticing her tension. He sat in the chair opposite, whittling a small wooden horse for Billy. "Not since the war. You fought in the war?" Zara asked, realizing how little she knew of his past. He nodded, his knife stilling. "Union Army. 4 years that felt like 40. That must have been terrible. Parts of it were. Saw things no man should see." His eyes grew distant. "Lost my brother James, Billy's father, at Gettysburg. He lived but came home different. The war stayed with him in ways it didn't with me." "Is that why you came west?" "Partly. James needed a fresh start. We both did. Montana seemed far enough from the memories." He resumed his whittling. "For a while it worked. James met Sarah. They had Billy built a life. But James never could outrun the nightmares. Took to drinking." His voice grew heavy. 2 winters back, their wagon went off the road coming back from town in a snowstorm. Both killed instantly." "I'm so sorry," Zara said softly. "Billy's all that's left of them. He's a good boy. Deserves better than what life's handed him so far." Thunder crashed directly overhead, and Zara flinched, dropping her mending. Henry set aside his carving and moved to sit beside her on the small sofa. "It'll pass," he said reassuringly. "Storms always do." His proximity was comforting, and without thinking, Zara leaned slightly against him. His arm came around her shoulders, light and undemanding. "Tell me about your life before," Henry said. "Not the bad parts, the good ones." Zara thought for a moment. "I love to read. My father had a small library, and I would spend hours there. And I played piano, though not very well." A small smile touched her lips. "My mother despaired of me ever becoming a proper society lady. Do you miss it? That life?" She considered the question carefully. "I miss certain comforts sometimes. Hot baths, fresh fruit in winter, but mostly no, it was confining." Henry's thumb traced small circles on her shoulder. "What about here? Is this life too hard?" "It's hard work," she admitted, "but it feels honest, worthwhile." She looked up at him. "I never feel confined here." Their eyes met, and something shifted between them, like air before a storm. Henry's gaze dropped to her lips, then back to her eyes, questioning. Slowly, giving her time to pull away, he bent his head toward hers. The kiss was different from the chaste good nights they'd shared. It was warm and seeking, an invitation rather than a demand. Zara found herself responding, her hand lifting to rest against his chest, feeling his heartbeat quicken beneath her palm. When they parted, Henry's eyes were dark with emotion. "I should check on Billy," he said, his voice rough. "Make sure the storm hasn't frightened him." Zara nodded, breathless and confused by the sudden longing that coursed through her. As Henry left to check on his nephew, she touched her fingers to her lips, wondering at the feelings this quiet, honorable man had awakened in her. That night, sleep eluded her, her thoughts circling back to the kiss, to the gentle strength of Henry's arms around her. For the first time since her ordeal in Philadelphia, she felt something other than fear or shame when thinking of a man's touch. August brought relentless heat and the exhausting work of preparing for winter. Zara learned to preserve vegetables from their garden, to dry apples in the sun, to make jam from wild berries Billy gathered. Henry and his ranch hands were busy from dawn until dusk, moving cattle to fresh pasture, repairing fences and harvesting hay. Despite the busyness, Zara noticed a change in her relationship with Henry. His eyes followed her more often, lingering when she wasn't looking directly at him. Their hands found reasons to touch, passing the salt at dinner, steadying each other on the porch steps, reaching for the same book. Each small contact sent warmth spreading through her. One afternoon, while Henry was out checking cattle with his ranch hands, Zara decided to bring him lunch. She packed bread, cold chicken, and apple pie into a basket and set out on the gentle mare Henry had been teaching her to ride. She found him at the creek that marked the northern boundary of the ranch, kneeling beside a calf tangled in barbed wire. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, revealing muscled forearms as he carefully cut the wire away from the frightened animal's legs. "Easy now," he murmured to the calf. "Almost done." Zara dismounted and approached quietly, not wanting to startle either of them. Henry glanced up, surprise and pleasure crossing his face. "Well, this is a nice surprise," he said, turning back to his task. "Hand me that rag, would you?" She passed him the cloth, and he wrapped it around a shallow cut on the calf's leg. "Should heal fine," he told her. "Just needed a bit of help getting untangled." As he worked, Zara was struck by the gentleness of his big hands, the patient way he soothed the frightened animal. When the calf was free, it scrambled up and trotted back to its mother, who had been watching anxiously from nearby. Henry stood, wiping his hands on his trousers. "What brings you out this way?" "I brought you lunch," she said, gesturing to the basket. "I thought you might be hungry." His smile was like sunrise. "That's mighty thoughtful. I'm starving." They sat in the shade of a cottonwood tree beside the creek, sharing the simple meal. Henry ate with appreciation, complimenting her on the pie. "You're settling in well," he observed. "Ranch life seems to agree with you." "I like it more than I expected to," she admitted. "There's satisfaction in work that matters," he nodded. "That's what kept me going after the war, knowing the ranch needed me, that Billy needed me." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the babbling of the creek and the distant lowing of cattle. "Zara," Henry said finally, his voice thoughtful, "I've been meaning to ask you something." She looked at him curiously. "Are you happy here, with me?" The question caught her off guard, but she didn't hesitate. "Yes, I am." Relief washed over his features. "Good, that's good." He seemed to gather his courage. "Because I find myself growing fonder of you every day, and I wanted to be sure the feeling wasn't one-sided." Zara's heart quickened. "It's not." Henry reached out, taking her hand in his. "I know our marriage didn't start in the usual way, but I'd like to try to make it real, if you're willing." She understood what he was asking and what he was offering, a true marriage in every sense. The thought sent both fear and longing through her. "I'm afraid," she admitted. "Not of you, never of you, but of—" "I understand," he said gently. "We can take all the time you need. I just wanted you to know where I stand." Impulsively, Zara leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. Henry remained perfectly still for a heartbeat, then responded with careful tenderness, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. When they separated, his eyes were dark with emotion. "We should head back," he said, his voice husky. "Storm's coming." Indeed, dark clouds were gathering on the horizon, promising an afternoon downpour. They packed up the remnants of lunch and mounted their horses, riding back toward the ranch side by side. That evening, after Billy had gone to bed, They sat together on the porch watching lightning illuminate the distant mountains. The air was heavy with moisture and unspoken feelings. "I should tell you something," Henry said, breaking the silence. "I wasn't entirely honest in my advertisement." Zara tensed beside him. "What do you mean?" "I said I needed a practical woman, not looking for romance." He turned to her, his expression earnest in the lamplight spilling from the window. "The truth is, I've been lonely out here. I wanted a companion, not just a housekeeper. I hoped we might grow to care for each other, given time." Relief flooded through her. "Is that why you've been so patient with me?" "Partly," he admitted. "And partly because I know what it's like to need time to heal." He took her hand. "What happened to you in Philadelphia was a violation, Zara. I'd never want to add to that hurt." "You haven't," she said softly. "You've helped heal it." Their eyes met, and in that moment Zara made a decision. Rising from her chair, she tugged gently at his hand. "Come with me," understanding dawned in his eyes. "Are you certain?" "I am." That night, their marriage truly began. Henry's tenderness and patience showed Zara that intimacy could be a gift freely given, not something to be taken or feared. In his arms, she found not the shame she'd carried for so long, but acceptance and growing love. Afterward, as they lay together in what was now their shared bedroom, Henry traced gentle patterns on her bare shoulder. "All right?" he asked softly. Zara nodded, resting her head against his chest. "More than all right." His arms tightened around her. "I want you to know something. I'll never hurt you, Zara, not ever, and I'll never let anyone else hurt you again." She believed him. For the first time since that terrible night in Philadelphia, she felt truly safe. As summer gave way to fall, their relationship deepened. Zara found her voice growing stronger, more confident, not just with Henry and Billy, but with the ranch hands and townspeople of Eureka. The haunted look that had shadowed her eyes began to fade, replaced by quiet contentment and occasional flashes of joy. Henry watched this transformation with wonder and pride. The woman he'd married out of practicality and compassion had become essential to his happiness. Her strength, revealed more each day, humbled and inspired him. On a crisp October morning, a letter arrived from Philadelphia. Zara recognized her aunt's handwriting and opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was news that her former fiancé had been arrested for attacking another woman, his reputation finally matching his true nature. "He can't hurt anyone else now," she told Henry that night as they sat before the fire. "And he can't hurt me anymore either." "He never could," Henry said, pulling her close. "Not once you found your strength." She looked up at him, this man who had offered her shelter when she needed it most. "I love you," she said, the words coming easily now. "I think I have for a while." Henry's smile was like sunrise after a long night. "I love you too, Zara Carson, more than I thought possible." Winter came early to Montana territory that year, blanketing the ranch in snow by mid-November. The world contracted to the warm circle of their home, where lamps burned against the darkness, and the hearth fire kept the cold at bay. On Christmas Eve, as they sat together watching the flames, Billy already asleep with dreams of presents, Henry presented Zara with a small package wrapped in brown paper. "What's this?" she asked, surprised. "Open it and see." Inside was a journal bound in soft leather, with a fountain pen tucked beside it. "You mentioned once that you used to write before," Henry explained. "I thought perhaps you might like to again. Your voice deserves to be heard, Zara, even if it's just on paper for now." Tears welled in her eyes as she traced the cover with her fingers. "Thank you. It's perfect." "I have something for you too," she said, handing him a carefully wrapped package. Inside was a hand-knitted scarf in deep blue wool, the color of his eyes. "It's not much, it's everything," he interrupted, wrapping it around his neck. "Because you made it." That night, in the quiet darkness of their bedroom, Zara whispered, "I have one more gift for you." "Oh." Henry propped himself on one elbow, looking down at her. Zara took his hand and placed it gently on her stomach. "We're going to have a baby." Joy dawned across his face like the first light of morning. "A baby, you're certain?" She nodded, her own happiness mirrored in his eyes. "In early summer, Dr. Bennett says." Henry gathered her close, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you," he whispered against her hair, "for coming here, for staying, for everything." Spring came to the ranch in a riot of wildflowers and new calves, the land awakening from winter's slumber. Zara's body changed with the season, her belly swelling with new life as the world around them grew green and vibrant. In late June, with summer sunshine streaming through the bedroom window, Zara gave birth to a daughter. Henry paced anxiously outside while Mrs. Holloway returned to help with the birth, coached Zara through her labor. When it was over, Henry entered to find his wife cradling a tiny bundle, exhausted but radiant. "Come meet your daughter," Zara said, her voice strong and clear. Henry approached the bed almost reverently, sitting carefully beside his wife and newborn child. When Zara placed the baby in his arms, his hands so capable with horses, cattle, and ranch work trembled slightly. "She's perfect," he whispered, gazing at the tiny face. "What shall we name her?" "I was thinking Hope," Zara suggested, "because that's what she represents, what you gave me when I had none." Henry's eyes met hers over their daughter's head. "Hope Carson. It's perfect." The summer passed in a haze of sleepless nights and joy-filled days as they adjusted to life with an infant. Billy proved to be a devoted uncle, watching over his small cousin with fierce protectiveness. The ranch prospered, the cattle fat on the abundant grasses of a rainy season. On their first anniversary, Henry took Zara for a ride to the hillside where he'd first shown her the ranch. The view was even more beautiful now, lush summer grasses swaying in the breeze, cattle grazing contentedly in the distance, their home nestled in the valley below. "Happy?" Henry asked, his arm around her waist. Zara leaned against him, thinking of how far she'd come from that frightened, silent woman who had stepped off the stagecoach a year ago. "Completely," she answered, her voice strong and clear. "I never imagined I could be this happy again. When I put that advertisement in the newspaper, I was looking for a practical arrangement," Henry admitted. "I never expected to fall in love." "When I answered it, I was looking for escape," Zara replied. "I never expected to find home." Their lips met in a kiss that tasted of promise and possibility, of a future built on trust and shared strength. As they rode back to the ranch, to Billy waiting impatiently on the porch and baby Hope in Mrs. Holloway's capable arms, Zara knew with absolute certainty that the shame that had once silenced her was gone forever, replaced by the steady, sustaining love of the man beside her and the family they had built together. 5 years passed, bringing changes both great and small to the Carson ranch. The single cattle operation expanded to include horses after Henry recognized Zara's natural affinity for the animals. Their breeding program gained a reputation throughout the territory for producing steady, intelligent mounts suited to ranch work. Hope grew from a solemn infant into a spirited child with her mother's dark hair and her father's blue eyes. She followed Henry everywhere, sitting atop his shoulders as he checked the herds, helping mend fences with her tiny hammer, falling asleep on his lap during evening story times. A son joined their family 2 years after Hope's birth, sturdy little James, named for Henry's fallen brother. Where Hope was thoughtful and observant, James was all movement and mischief from the moment he learned to crawl. Billy, now 15, had grown tall and lanky, showing promise as a rancher in his own right. He'd inherited his uncle's way with animals and his aunt's quiet determination. The tragedy of his early years had left its mark, but the security of the home Henry and Zara provided had given him the foundation to thrive. On a warm September afternoon, as Zara sat on the porch shelling peas with Hope's assistance, a wagon approached the ranch house. She shaded her eyes against the sun, recognizing Sheriff Davis from Eureka. "Afternoon, Mrs. Carson," he called, reining his horse to a stop. "Is your husband about?" "He's in the south pasture," she replied, rising to her feet. "Is something wrong, Sheriff?" "Got some business to discuss with both of you, if you don't mind." "Nothing to worry about," he added, seeing her concerned expression. Henry arrived a short while later, summoned by one of the ranch hands. After greeting the sheriff, they settled at the kitchen table while Billy took the children outside to play. "Got an unusual situation," Sheriff Davis explained, accepting the coffee Zara offered. "Man came through town yesterday, asking questions about you, Mrs. Carson." Zara's hand froze midway to her cup. "What kind of questions?" "Wanted to know if a woman matching your description had come through Eureka about 5-6 years back. Said he represented a family from Philadelphia looking for their daughter." Fear, long dormant, coiled in her stomach. "Did he give a name?" Called himself Harold Porter. Said he was a private investigator. Henry's hand covered hers on the table, warm and reassuring. "What did you tell him, Sheriff?" "Nothing yet. Something about him didn't sit right with me." The sheriff sipped his coffee. "Figured I'd come talk to you first, see if this was welcome news or unwelcome trouble." Zara looked at Henry, saw the steady support in his eyes, and made her decision. Drawing strength from his presence, she told Sheriff Davis an abbreviated version of her story: her flight from Philadelphia, the shame that had driven her west, her marriage to Henry. The sheriff listened without interruption. When she finished, he nodded thoughtfully. "Suspected it might be something like that. Too many women come west running from something." He set down his cup. "What would you like me to do, Mrs. Carson?" "Could this man be from my former fiancé?" she asked, voicing her deepest fear. "Can't say for certain. But if you'd prefer he not find you, I can be mighty unhelpful." Henry squeezed her hand. "It's your decision, Zara," she considered carefully. The woman who had fled Philadelphia no longer existed. In her place stood Zara Carson, wife, mother, rancher, a woman who had found her voice and her strength in the wide open spaces of Montana territory. "Tell him you've never heard of Zara Kline," she said firmly, "because in truth, she's not here anymore. I'm Zara Carson now, and this is where I belong." The sheriff nodded, satisfied. "That's what I'll do then. And if he persists, I'll suggest that Montana territory isn't friendly to those who disturb the peace of its citizens." After he departed, Henry held Zara close on the porch, feeling the slight tremor that ran through her. "Are you all right?" "I am," she said, and meant it. "It was a shock, that's all, to have the past reach for me after all this time." "The past can't touch you here," Henry promised. "Not unless you want it to." She looked up at him, this man who had saved her in ways he would never fully understand. "I have everything I want right here." Later that night, with the children asleep and the ranch quiet under a canopy of stars, Zara sat at the small desk in their bedroom, opening the leather journal Henry had given her that first Christmas. It was nearly full now, its pages covered with her neat handwriting stories, memories, dreams for their future. Writing had become her sanctuary, a place to explore the person she was becoming. Henry came in from his evening check of the ranch, his steps quiet on the wooden floor. He bent to kiss the top of her head. "Writing again?" She smiled up at him. "Just finishing something." He moved to prepare for bed, comfortable in their shared routine. Zara turned back to the journal, completing the sentence she had begun. I am not defined by what was done to me, but by what I have built from the broken pieces. My voice, once silenced by shame, now speaks of love and hope and possibility. This is my true story, not a tale of escape, but one of coming home. She closed the journal and joined Henry in bed, curling into the familiar warmth of his embrace. I was thinking, Henry said, his voice rumbling pleasantly against her ear, about adding onto the house next spring. The children need more room, and you've mentioned wanting a proper study for your writing. That sounds wonderful, she agreed. Maybe a bigger kitchen, too. I've been thinking about teaching cooking classes for some of the young wives in the area. Henry's arms tightened around her. You've come a long way from the woman who couldn't speak when she stepped off that stagecoach. I had help, she reminded him. You told me I was safe to speak here, and you are, always. Zara thought of the frightened young woman who had traveled west with nothing but shame and desperate hope. How astonished that version of herself would be to see the life she had built, the love she had found, the family she had created, the strength she had discovered within herself. I love you, Henry Carson, she whispered, for seeing me when I was invisible, even to myself. His kiss was tender, a physical echo of the words he spoke next. And I love you, Zara Carson, for finding the courage to be seen. Outside their window, the vast Montana sky spread above the ranch they had built together, stars burning bright against the darkness just as hope had kindled in Zara's heart, a small flame growing stronger with each passing year until it illuminated every corner of her life, banishing the shadows of the past forever. 10 years after Zara stepped off the stagecoach in Eureka, the Carson Ranch had grown into one of the most prosperous in Montana territory. The original modest house had expanded to accommodate their growing family and ambitions. A dedicated study for Zara's writing adjoined a larger kitchen, where she taught local women traditional and innovative cooking techniques. The horse breeding operation had gained national recognition, with buyers coming from as far as Chicago and St. Louis. Their family had grown as well. A third child, daughter Elizabeth, had joined them 3 years earlier, completing their family circle. Billy, now 20, managed much of the day-to-day ranch operations, showing natural leadership and business acumen that made Henry beam with pride. On a snowy December morning, as the family gathered for breakfast, Henry unfolded a letter that had arrived the previous day. "Well, I'll be," he said, surprise evident in his voice. "What is it?" Zara asked, passing plates of hot cakes to the eager children. "It's from a publishing house in Chicago," Henry replied, looking up with wonder. "They want to publish your stories." Zara nearly dropped the maple syrup. "What?" Henry passed her the letter. "Remember that magazine editor who stayed here last summer when his stagecoach broke down? Seems he remembered the story you shared with him and passed your name to a publisher friend." The children watched with curiosity as their mother read the letter with shaking hands. "They want to publish a collection of my frontier stories," she whispered. "They're offering an advance and everything." Hope, now 9 and precociously well-read, clapped her hands. "Mama's going to be a real author," Henry beamed across the table. "She already is. Now the rest of the world will know it too." That night, after the children were asleep, Henry found Zara in her study, staring at the letter in the lamplight. "Having second thoughts?" he asked, settling into the chair beside her desk. She shook her head slowly. "Not exactly, just thinking about how far I've come. When I arrived here, I couldn't even speak. Now they want to publish my words for everyone to read." "You've always had important things to say," Henry reminded her. "You just needed to find your voice." Zara looked around the room at the shelves lined with journals filled with her writing records of their life together, stories she'd crafted, memories she'd preserved. Do you think I should do it? I think your stories could help other women find their own courage, Henry said thoughtfully. But it's your decision, Zara. Whatever you choose, I'm proud of you. She reached across the desk to take his hand. We built this life together, Henry. I wouldn't have any stories to tell without you. His smile was tender in the golden lamplight. Then tell them well, my love. Tell them true. Spring brought the publication of Frontier Woman, Stories from Montana Territory by Zara Carson. The slim volume, containing 12 stories based on Zara's experiences and observations of frontier life, received unexpected acclaim. Letters arrived from readers across the country, many from women who saw their own struggles reflected in Zara's honest prose. As the Carson family celebrated this success, Montana Territory prepared for statehood, bringing new opportunities and challenges to the frontier they called home. Through it all, Henry and Zara faced the future together, their love deepened by the years and trials they had weathered side by side. On the 15th anniversary of their wedding, they stood together on the hilltop where Henry had first shown Zara their ranch. The land stretched before them, transformed by their labor and vision expanded pastures, healthy herds, the house below now a proper ranch house with a wide veranda and rooms for their growing children. Did you ever imagine this? Zara asked, leaning against her husband's solid strength. When you sent for a mail-order bride, did you picture any of this? Henry's arm tightened around her waist. I hoped for a companion, maybe friendship in time. I never dared dream of such happiness. He turned to face her fully. What about you? When you stepped off that stagecoach, silent and afraid, did you imagine this life? Zara shook her head, remembering the desperate young woman she had been. I only hoped for safety, for a place to hide my shame. I never expected to find my voice, my strength. She reached up to touch his weathered face, still handsome after all these years. I never expected to find such love. As the sun set over the Montana mountains, painting the landscape in gold and amber, Henry bent to kiss his wife, a kiss filled with the depth of feeling that 15 years had only strengthened. When they parted, both their eyes shone with emotion. Thank you, Zara whispered, the words carrying the weight of all they had built together, for telling me I was safe to speak here. And thank you, Henry replied, his voice rough with feeling, for choosing to stay and make this your home. Hand in hand, they walked back down the hill toward the lights of their ranch house, where their children waited. Behind them, the vast Montana sky deepened to purple, stars emerging one by one bright points of light against the darkness, just as their love had illuminated the shadows of Zara's past, transforming fear into courage, silence into strength, and two solitary lives into one enduring love story.